basement of La Penta. This is WICR.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Sports Fall. I'm your host with the most, Jersey Joe Archino, and we are coming down to the end. We have broken down the Midwest, the West, and the East. It is now time to break down the final region of the South. Now, I'll kind of give you the recap in the Final Four to this point. I have Kentucky, I have Wisconsin, and I have Villanova. Now it is time to finish it off, and let's go over the South. Now, the first one you have is Duke taking on the play-in game. Whoever the play-in game is, doesn't really matter. Duke is very good. Duke will win that game. 16 seed is not going to beat anybody this year, and I don't think it ever will, really. I mean, we've seen a couple close ones, but I just think that drop-off is so tremendous, even with the way college basketball has changed. I just don't think it's ever going to happen. Then you have San Diego State and St. John's. Now, St. John's played Duke pretty tough when they played at the Garden a couple months ago, but I don't trust them. Now, San Diego State, there's not a ton of things they do definitively well, but I like Steve Fisher. Steve Fisher's teams have done very well in the tournament the last couple years. They have historically, and I just don't trust St. John's to have it all together here. I do think San Diego State moves on to play Duke. Then Utah and San Francisco. Now, this SF Austin is a team a lot of people like. Listening to some Vegas guys on Colin Cowherd this morning, they love SF Austin. And, I mean, when you look at what they did in the tournament last year, I think you probably should. Part of me, though, I got to stick with Utah here. I mean, I think SF Austin is good. From what I saw last year, they can do a lot of good things well offensively. They would do a lot of things that would make you confident in them. But I like Utah for some reason. I got the feeling in my gut on them. Again, this is a very toss-up one, but I got to go with my gut here, and I'm just going to stick with Utah. But if you wanted to put SF Austin to win this one, I'm not sure if I could come up with a convincing enough argument to make you switch your pick. I really don't. This is a very much of a coin flip, and it's a very tough game, but I'm going to stick with Utah here. I just have seen them play more primetime opponents, and for that main reason, I got to give them my edge here. Now, you have Georgetown and Eastern Washington. Georgetown terrifies me. They have not done well in the tournament the last couple years. I don't know if they have a definitive star you could really trust here. And I learned my lesson a couple years ago with Otto Porter Jr. I love Georgetown. Love them to make a run. They could not have been more disappointing. Lost in their first matchup. I think they were a 2 seed. They lost to Florida Gulf Coast. I don't trust Georgetown for a minute, but I do think they have enough to beat Eastern Washington and to move on to play Utah. But again, you've always got to be a little bit weary of Georgetown because recently they are not a dependable team in this tournament, and I would be a little bit careful, but they should have enough to win their first matchup. You go on to SMU against UCLA. UCLA is one of the teams that a lot of people cannot fathom how they got into this tournament. Again, historic powerhouse, probably the most winning program in college basketball history with John Wooden, the run he went on. But SMU is a good team. I think you saw it against UConn. They have a good tempo. They know what tempo they want to play at. UCLA has been incredibly disappointing all year. They don't have one win you could really grasp your hand around. They haven't been good against good teams. I don't think they have an identity, which is the biggest thing you've got to be concerned with. SMU knows their identity. They know what their tempo is. They're well coached. I don't think I would hesitate for a second to pick SMU here. Now, the next one is Iowa State against UAB. I love Iowa State. What Fred Hoiberg has done there is outstanding. You look at a team offensively, there's not a lot of teams in this tournament who are better than Iowa State offensively. And the thing I love about them is they can play from behind. Kind of like Ole Miss, when they're behind, you can never count them out because they can knock down shots. They have 4 perimeter players on this team who are threats anytime they're on the floor. They're very good offensively. They're never out of a game even when they're down. And let's be honest, they will be down because the one knock on Iowa State is they're not good defensively, and that's very true. They give up a lot of points in quarters, and they're usually bailed out by their offense. But I do think in this tournament, you're going to have a hard time finding a lot of teams who are better than them offensively, and I do like them to make a deep run, and you'll see in a minute, but I do have them beating UAB. Iowa and Davidson is the next one. Now, Davidson, ever since Steph Curry kind of put them on the map, has gotten a lot of respect and attention, and I'm glad about that because this is a good program. Now, I do think Davidson beats Iowa. Davidson has a very good backcourt of 2 guards. They're very efficient with the ball, and they can move the ball well. They set up the offense very well. I don't think there's anything to really wrap your hand around about Iowa. I don't really know what one thing they do definitively well. Maybe they're good defensively, but I don't think they have the offense to step up and compete with Davidson. I like Davidson against Iowa. Then you have Gonzaga, and I think Gonzaga, a lot of people are tough on Gonzaga. I mean, Mark Few doesn't have the best tournament resume, but I think this is generally considered one of his best teams of all time. They will have no problem against North Dakota State. North Dakota State, move on to other things. Now let's kind of go and break down the rest. Duke against San Diego State. I like Duke. A lot of people consider Jahlil Okafor the best player in the tournament. I don't know if I would disagree with that. I don't know if he does a ton away from the basket, but you look at the way that he moves his feet around the basket and what he can do around the basket. He is very good. But if you run into a smart team like Notre Dame, and you look at what Notre Dame did and how they just kind of let him do what he wanted, and they took away the three-point shooting. They put him on the line. That's going to be a problem. Hacking Okafor, because he is a horrible free throw shooter. When it comes down to important spots, you got to worry about that people are going to hack Okafor. I think it's really going to happen, and he can't hit his free throws. I always worry about that. I really do. Some people consider it a cheap strategy, but you know what? If you don't make your free throws, you deserve to lose, and I think that's going to become an issue at some point. Then Utah and Georgetown. Again, Georgetown scares me incredibly based on what they've done recently. I really don't have a ton of faith in them. I don't think they've earned our faith. I have Utah beating them. Now, this is a little bit of a coin flip, but again, I just don't trust Georgetown to make any deep runs. I think Utah has done a lot of good things offensively and a very good and fast Pac-12 conference. I have them moving on and playing Duke. So I have Duke and Utah at the top there, and then at the bottom, I have SMU and Iowa State. I have Iowa State beating SMU. Iowa State, incredibly talented offensively. I do have them beating SMU. Then Davidson and Gonzaga. Now, this is an interesting matchup. Very good guards, but Gonzaga has real size, and it's enough to get past Davidson. So I have Gonzaga and Iowa State, and in the top region of the South, Duke and Utah. Obviously, Utah is nowhere near where Duke is, so I have Duke getting into that Elite 8, and I think Duke will take on Iowa State. Now, Gonzaga, again, very good. Mark Few is a good coach, but Iowa State has the scoring I don't know if anybody else has. They can play at a speed and a tempo and hit shots from anywhere. I think they have one true big, which will be important, and he is very good. But I just think overall, even if they're down to a point, they're just too talented offensively. They get a couple things to go their way. I have Iowa State winning that one and taking on Duke. So I have Duke and Iowa State. Now, this is a very good game, and their one knock you put on both teams is they're both not good defensively. They're both very good offensive teams. The one thing I worry about Duke is two things. Defense, which I already said, and depth. I think depth is a little bit of an issue. Now, they have great guards. Tyus Jones, the one thing he's done the best is in crucial spots, in big moments, he's really delivered. You watch both games he played against North Carolina this year, he was money in the moments that mattered. Tyus Jones is a good basketball player, but I don't know what it is. I just got this thing about Fred Hoiberg and Iowa State. I have them beating Duke and going to the Final Four now. This is a tough one, but I love Jahlil Okafor. But like I said, free throws are going to be an issue. This might be a very close game at the end. If he's getting fouled, he's not making his free throws. Iowa State, in a blink of an eye, they'll go up on like an 8-0 run. They're just incredibly talented offensively. I don't know if Duke is as good offensively as they are. You got to give Duke the edge in coaching, but I think there's a point where Iowa State's just too good offensively, and they beat Duke. So before I end this segment and move on to the Final Four overview and the national champion, crowning the national champion. I already said it's Kentucky, and I think most of you probably already figured I was picking Kentucky. But in the Final Four, I have Kentucky against Wisconsin and Villanova against Iowa State. Now, I think for a lot of people, yours is probably looking very close to mine. A lot of people, pretty much everyone has Kentucky. A lot of you probably either have Wisconsin or in Arizona. And a lot of you probably either have Villanova or Virginia. Like I said before, Virginia, their pace is too slow on offense, so for that reason, I don't like them. Arizona, I think it's about as big a coin flip as you can get with Wisconsin, but I like Frank the Tank. I like Bo Ryan. I like Sean Miller, too, but I do think that something goes Wisconsin's way. They get there, and Iowa State against Duke, very good matchup, not great defensively, but I like Iowa State's offense too much. That is my Final Four, though, after this quick break, coming back and breaking it down and crowning the national champion. So stay with us, and I will be right back.